Hello and welcome everybody to this week's edition of the GCNC Worldview. Really appreciate having everyone here. Last time I was doing this, I was in the warm Mexican Caribbean, and we were talking about our stuff coming up in Peru this fall. And I've since moved north, and there's snow outside, and I've got a beautiful view of the Rocky Mountains back home for a little bit in Colorado. And wanted to take the opportunity while here to talk to one of my favorite people in the PR and communications space in cannabis worldwide. As you all know, we're always super thankful for the companies that make this podcast possible. So I want to do a shout out to Boveda. Thank you, as always, for being one of our longest standing sponsors and great supporters. We love having you. And today I get to talk to one of our Global Cannabis Network Collective members, Shawna McGregor from Maverick PR. And Shawna, thanks so much for joining. We've been trying to get this on the books for a long time, so thanks for coming on.
Sure thing. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, it's great. So, Shawna, I mean, you and I have worked together off and on for years at this point, and I've seen a lot of your great work here in the United States. I know you're very well aware of communications and movements in other parts of the world as well. But, you know, before we dive into that and I get off down rabbit holes, why don't you tell people a little bit about Maverick PR and what you guys do, what your mission is, and sort of your background and expertise a little.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm CEO and founder of Maverick Public Relations. I've been working in the communications industry and public relations for 25 years. And in 2018, I decided to launch my own agency, Maverick Public Relations. My background is in highly regulated industries, renewable energy, sustainable technology, biotech, agribusiness. And so when I moved to Colorado in 2012, cannabis folded into that. But anyway, so Maverick is a full service communications agency. We do everything from media relations, crisis comms, content strategy, influencer relations, all of that good stuff, and media training as well. And we're 100% woman owned and certified by the city and county of Denver, and working on my federal designation as well.
Nice. Well, I know, the complexity of cannabis is interesting when it comes to communications. People that have listened to the podcast for a while know that I call myself a recovering advertising executive, right? And spent a lot of years in agencies. But within the cannabis market, we're so restricted. Doesn't matter if you're in a medicinal market in Europe or an emerging medicinal market in South America, or you're in what is considered the more free markets when it comes to communications and advertising, like the US, there's still huge restrictions. And one of the powerful tools that I think people often forget is public relations, community outreach, using the faces of your executives and their voice as an amplification of your brand. When you have looked at some of your clients over the last couple of years, have you seen the increase in usage of the types of services that Maverick holds, rising, or is this still something that we really have to push and educate people on how to use it?
That was the craziest thing is in real life, in the energy companies I've worked for, or the, agribusiness, it was all, you had a full plate of services. You could advertise, you could sponsor, you could boost words, all of the things. And none of those things are available to the cannabis industry. So what I found out when I first started getting into this industry in 2012 to 2014 was there was a real desire from the media to understand what was going on, and not a lot of, companies that wanted to be the tall poppy. They didn't want to talk to the press when they've put their hearts, minds, soul, all of their money, all of their blood, sweat, and tears into this business. What would, in a state where it's legally regulated, if done right, it was our only way of educating, communicating, amplifying, and positioning our clients as thought leaders.
Yeah, and I know as I've talked to folks all around the world, right, getting this idea that media and community outreach programs positioned correctly and engaged correctly can be a tool and not something you have to be scared of, is a tough pill to swallow, quite frankly, because people are so used to seeing negative press that part of our mission at GCNC has been communicating positively and outwardly. And maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I also tend to think that if you've spent some time having conversations with journalists and other media outlets, when something does go wrong, they tend to give you a little bit of time to explain yourself before bad news comes out. So that becomes a whole cycle of really rational and human communication that I think is often lost, especially in cannabis.
Well, the first step when you're in PR, and the very first thing I learned in PR 101 when I went to University of Florida, go Gators, always like to get that in, was you better be able and willing and ready to walk away. You better do your homework, and you better make sure that the people you represent stand for your ethics and your morals, and they're transparent. So once we've done our homework and we know we can get behind a client, a brand, whatnot, then we talk to them. And this is like part of the media training stuff I do, where I've been doing media relations for 25 years. I've done thousands of interviews. I can only think of one or two that potentially went off the rails, and none of that spiraled out of control. You see bad headlines all the time, but but now we're entering, and I think it's really important to state this, we're entering a very disruptive time in journalism, journalism is very important to me. It's the fourth estate, holds people accountable, holds the government accountable for their movements, their timelines, et cetera, as well as any bad actors. So, if you're going out there and you're telling your story, you are only just helping to educate. You better have your lawyers. I love lawyers. You better have your business buttoned up and compliance and all of that. But if you're doing everything right, you're not going to get a bad headline. And even when an investigative and journalist has approached me to cover my clients, understanding who that person is, what their goals and motives are, what their story is, and what they're expecting to get out of it, we have always ended up with good stories that I consider positive to at least neutrally educational.
Yeah, and I know you've worked with a number of executives in cannabis who operate multinationally, are pretty big names. I won't say them. If you want to, you can. That's up to you. What have you found to be, as you're working on some of these brands, what have you found to be sort of the biggest challenge to earning press, whether it's in the United States or anywhere else? And how are you coaching folks around, having the patience to give it time to work?
Whew, that is a big one to unpack. Okay, where do I start? So first, the patience piece of it. Um, I've been doing this for a long time. I started out at a very big agency, national, international agency. And I've heard stories just in the last week of clients who are like, I was at XYZ. They gave me a bill for, tens of thousands of dollars for their
Right.
monthly retainer. And what am I getting? So the first thing I have to try to educate my clients about is there is a learning curve. I know you want to be in New York Times. I know you want to be on CNBC. I know you want these things. They might take more time. I want you to feel the movement. I want to get you what I can get you quickly so you feel it, but you need to be prepared for these bigger pieces for us to educate. And that could take anywhere from 6 months, I hate to say it, 6 years, but that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
So, there goes along with that transparency, trust, action, activities, showing them what we're doing and explaining why this process takes so long. That was the second question. What was your first question?
So what the biggest challenge was that you saw working with these executives on a multinational level, in getting coverage and press?
Um, First of all, I think the first issue was their initial hesitation and concern that something that they said was going to end up in a bad story or used against them, that sort of thing. So once we cleared that hurdle, in the beginning, when I first started doing cannabis PR in 2014, all the media was so hungry for it that getting those hits honestly was kind of like taking candy from a baby. But now, as we see this disruptive time in journalism, and the more that our journalism friends are cut and, stories are being written by AI or whatever the case might be, and there's 20 of me now to one of
Right.
our dear friends. The biggest challenge is, making sure that we keep the relationships we've created, show our value, provide our service, and give those offerings so that they continue to see us as a resource, a valuable resource, and not just, and someone who understands what they need. I'm not just, sending them stuff that they don't need. Although, sometimes I do think, this reporter should see this. They might not always fully agree, but I do think about it really hard.
Yeah. No, and I like that. I started running my first PR shop in 1995. So it's been a bit, and things were sent out via fax and phone
Wire
calls,
service.
wire service, which we still have, but is not
Oh,
nearly as effective.
I meant like
So,
Western Union
oh
wire.
yes, oh yeah, telegrams and all that. Yeah, at one point, folks, Telegram was not just an app; it was a thing. And so I think the ability to know who you can trust, having the opportunity to vet not only the media but the PR people that you're working with is really important. I've stated this publicly a number of times, so it won't be sensationalism, but one of my biggest pet peeves in media is when the PR shop is getting more press than the clients. It is, you don't have to respond, Shawna. I know for a fact
Happy to.
that this is a thing in cannabis, and it drives me nuts because we're supposed to be helping our clients, just like the GCNC. Yes, we are forward. We want people to see our faces because it's how we communicate. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is the success of our members and connecting them. And as such, that success will lift all boats. So yeah, if you want to comment on that, I know you to be great at what you do. I've seen it for a decade. So people should be vetting their PR firms in ways that aren't tied to little trophies or whether or not somebody's face has been on the cover of a magazine.
This is true. And I do have a few things to say about this because here I am on your podcast because when you asked me, I couldn't say no. Was I like thinking to myself, could I get one of my other clients on here? Would that make more sense? That's where my head goes first. Often, I do think that you have to understand how your PR agency works and what your deliverables are. And, it's 2024, it's not 1994 anymore. And in 1994, I think PR was much more of this fuzzy, feel good, ego stroking type industry that was really easy to cut the bottom line. Now we have so many ways to measure and value and show the work. And to me, that's been my number one priority since I started Maverick, and particularly over the last year. How are we showing that this very much top of a sales funnel, initiative effort is creating sales? And you've got case studies, you've got all kinds of things that, we can talk about. One of my longest clients I will talk about is Shawna, and I started working with Nancy Whiteman in 2015. And that consistency of staying with an agency for a significant amount of time, we were able to really work together. It's really important to think about what are your goals and your audiences? Who are you trying to reach? In the beginning, we leaned in much more to B2B, and now we're looking at the consumer space a lot more. And this is kind of across the board with all of our clients. I represent a law firm, Fortis law firm, and from Wall Street Journal articles to speaking engagements, those things take time, but it's being very transparent and explaining what we're doing and why we're doing it. And at the end of the day, if a client has been with you for 5, 6, 7 years, I could have all of the reports in the world showing traction, but the fact that they stick around for a while means a lot too.
Yeah, absolutely. Retention is often the best measurement of success because it means everybody is seeing how it works. And we should probably use this as a segue to explain how we ended up talking about having you come on, because it was tied to Shawna and Nancy and this discussion around global cannabis and opportunities that are coming up at South by Southwest here in just under a month now. That's pretty exciting. Mm-hmm. So, as an example for folks listening and watching this podcast, this is an example where Shawna was diligent in working with an organization that's frankly pretty hard to get on a stage for, with South by Southwest and bring a group that I am just humbled and excited beyond measure to be part of, where we get to talk next month in Austin on stage about it. So, thank you for helping to connect that, but it's a great tangible illustration of how PR works and how wonderful it is as a tool.
If I could just talk a little bit more about that,
Sure.
March 11th in Austin, 2:30 Central, I believe. Monday, March 11th. So really, I've worked with a lot of international cannabis clients. Our expertise really is in the United States, and understanding, again, we're going back to that long tail of a process. You have to understand that South by Southwest opens a panel picker from the end of June to the end of July, the year before you're actually going to be speaking. So you have to be prepared. You have to have your thoughts together. You have to submit. You have to do, the promotion around your panel picker. And that's just part of the acceptance piece of it. And then, you have to organize your folks and get them, once you're in, there's a whole other level of making sure that people know what they're doing and where they're going. And I think there's something else I was going to say, but
it's fine. I think I think that one is great. And the fact that you are planning so far ahead also is another illustration that when I'm talking to my members and other companies, like, you have to invest in these types of programs for the long haul. It will make a difference for you, but you have to commit. It doesn't mean you have to commit, tens of thousands of dollars every month, but you have to have a plan. You have to work with somebody that can think strategically and plan ahead. I mean, if I had to think about it, last summer, I was, at conferences in Germany and checking out markets in France and Malta, which is all relevant. But I sure as hell wasn't thinking about filling out a form for Austin in March. So, I mean, that's why you have to have a team of people working on your behalf and really thinking through all that. So, that's Chris's advice for smart PR planning. Plan ahead and get a team that can think for you. So I think it's wonderful, Shawna, that we're able to plug that and have that out there, because it is going to be fun. And having sat on one of the prep calls, everybody is super enthused, but they also come at it from different angles. And I think that makes for the best conversations on stage. If everybody agrees 100%, then it's not very interesting. And we don't. And it's okay. And it's wonderful. And it reflects the state of cannabis worldwide in a lot of ways. So it's very cool. I want to transition just a little bit and spend a few minutes talking about media training specifically, because it's one of those things that we said, hey, we really need to dig into this. And I know you mentioned it a little bit, but if you are an executive in cannabis and you're considering going down the path of really pursuing a PR strategy, Shawna, without like revealing the whole toolbox, like, what are these first steps that people have to really think through when it comes to training? Because you can't just hop on and start going.
I'm always happy to reveal all steps, you never have a second chance to make a first impression. That really, it's an old saying, but it still bears a lot of weight. And being prepared and understanding what you're walking into is going to make you more comfortable. It's going to provide a better experience, and it's going to create something that you will likely want to share. So whether that is understanding where to look when you're doing a Zoom interview, or where to look or understand what's going on in the world of broadcast journalism or speaking in sound bites, there are, things to be thinking about there. Definitely gathering your thoughts. Like, one thing that we walk through in our media training is we always put together a briefing doc. We always will ask the reporter questions that they may not always give you because they hold that stuff back waiting for you to ask. But things like, what is your deadline? And knowing that sometimes some journalists will say Tuesday when it's actually Friday is their deadline, and understanding also what type of questions they're going to ask, the angle that they're taking, what can you be prepared to speak to, and what's that most important part. If it is a controversial topic, you might want to take a step back and say, where are you getting this information? What is the news hook that you're looking at? Who else are you talking to? And if it's so controversial, you might not even accept it, but it's on the fence, saying, I don't think I can take this unless I can get the questions in advance. There are many news outlets that have a policy that they will not give it to you in advance, but it's just something to think about. And being prepared, showing up on time, never missing a deadline. And we are all human beings in this world. We are. Yes, it's true.
Yeah. Are you sure? That's a whole different conspiracy, Shawna.
Yes. we're all humans and we're all going through the same thing. And so treating everyone with respect, including journalists and especially journalists, not only is just something that you should do, but it'll get you a far way too. It'll get you a long way.
Yeah, and my experience has been even if you disagree with them, um, there's still room for being human, right? And compassionate. And you don't have, not everything, folks, has to be a war. Not everything needs to be an argument. There are ways to tactfully agree to disagree, provided you're using logic. I mean, for me, that's always the thing. If you're just disagreeing to be an ass, that's open season as far as I'm concerned. But if you're disagreeing because you fundamentally have thought about your position, it's good. And as I stated earlier, sometimes those types of discussions are the best ones because they get people to think.
It actually is almost imperative that if a reporter comes to you with an idea that is in opposition of what you believe, that's when you should absolutely take the interview and be prepared. Yeah, I mean, it's something like you need to work on not being reactive, to be prepared. Don't get heated. The more heated you get, the more ammo you're giving. The story will potentially live on even longer in a way that you wouldn't want it live on. In media training, we talk about the three audiences that we're looking at. We talk about those in opposition. You can rarely move those folks, but you still sometimes have to try. You've got your believers who you absolutely have to continue to educate. They love you. They'll stay along with you. And as long as you remain your brand, to stay true to your brand ethics. And then, of course, there are those undecideds. They may be leaning more towards the opposition. This is your chance. If a reporter comes to you on a topic that is in opposition to what you believe to be true or know to be true, this is your absolute chance to be that opposing voice and get the truth out. Because the one thing in journalism, real journalism today, because there's a lot of pay to play and other nonsense out there, but they've got to take both sides of the story. So that's why often when you see a cannabis story, you'll see someone from Smart or one of those other organizations, because they have to get the opposition voice. So they're coming to you to speak out against an issue. Think really hard about why you wouldn't want to do it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think those are all great lessons. I mean, we're coming up on time here, and we always try and keep it tight. So what I would tell people listening is, one, if you have questions on media training, on PR, how you can make that relevant, whether you're in the United States or you're in Colombia or Germany, these tactics shift in how they're implemented depending on countries and cultures and sort of the media landscape. But one note that you just made, and I think it's really important we pay attention to, is there is what I'll call traditional journalism, or journalism that really looks at an issue and says, we've got to analyze both sides and present it. There's social media, which is not PR and it's not balanced in any way. So don't fool yourself into thinking that somehow getting a bunch of likes on a Facebook thing is somehow public relations or media relations. It's not. And being a sort of rational voice in the room and being prepared is key. Lots of people try and live off of personality alone. And while they may be spectacularly friendly people or really great, like, you can't build long-term brands off of that. We can sit here and debate it all day. We won't. I'm right on that point. But I just want to, thank you, Shawna, for giving us some knowledge and information on it. I'm looking forward to getting feedback from the audience and members, because I know this has been a hugely hot topic. and just appreciate you coming on and talking to us for a little bit.
Absolutely, anytime. And any hot topics, any questions, I'm always here and available.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Don't forget to subscribe to the GCNC Worldview. And if you're in Austin on March 11th, come by and check out that panel at South by Southwest. And if not, you can certainly follow Shawna and Maverick PR and, of course, the GCNC, and we'll get you all the updates out of that as well. So thanks, everybody. Thanks to Boveda for sponsoring, and we'll talk to you all next time.
Thanks, guys.